Welcome to Thunderdome. Welcome to AP Psychology. I'm going to try to teach this exactly how you would see me if I was in this classroom and you were in this classroom. That's what I'm going to do. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, everything's going to go great. And if it doesn't, it's all good. We're going to figure it out. Alright, so, count how many times the player's wearing white pass the basketball.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count?
How many passes?
The correct answer is 15 passes.
15 passes.
But did you see the gorilla?
What? Oh, there it is. So, lesson number 1 in psychology. Your attention is actually like a spotlight, okay? If for some reason, you think you're good at multitasking, whatever it is, you could be better than others, but you're not good at multitasking. The human is built to focus on one thing and give its attention to one thing. And when it does that, it tends to not pick up other things in its field of view, or it's doesn't hear certain things because you weren't listening for that in the first place. So, that's what we're talking about here. The selective attention, and this is a selective attention test. You might have seen this before, and you could be the person sitting there right now saying, I saw the gorilla. Okay, cool, you saw the gorilla. But some people didn't because they were intently focusing on counting the number of passes. So, all right, let's see if old Mr. Technology here can get this going. Okay, so here we are. The most interesting psychology experiments and phenomenon. Stay right there. Okay. So, welcome to psychology. In this course, you are going to kind of learn more about yourself and how you think as a human, and what humans are kind of born to do, with their minds and their brains, and also, how other people think as well and behave. So these are just some interesting things that I found throughout our time, that we're going to be traveling through this psychology, AP psychology class. These are some interesting things that I found that we'll probably see several times, but we're gonna go through the most interesting psychology experiments and phenomena. So the first one, the Little Albert Experiment. I'm not going to show you this video. If you want to watch this video, you can. It's on the PowerPoint, that I've given to you in our online classroom. But the Little Albert Experiment is pretty much Pavlov's dogs, except with a baby. So you know what Pavlov's dogs is, right? Ivan Pavlov, won the Nobel Prize in 1904, and he basically trained a dog to salivate to the sound of a bell. Not too hard. around the same time, there's this guy named John B. Watson. John B. Watson, American behaviorist is what we're going to call him. Also, pretty much studying behavior, which is a huge component of psychology. And he basically does exactly what Pavlov does, except to a little baby. He takes little Albert, who he rented off of his mom, pretty much, for an experiment. He takes little Albert and he sets him down, and babies are inherently scared or startled or cry with a couple of things. Obviously pain, loud noises, and a drop. So imagine if I have a baby right here and I drop it. It'd be like, oh, it'd be startled. So he uses a loud noise. He takes this metal rod behind the baby's head, okay? Takes it, all right? Takes a hammer, strikes the metal rod, and then presents different things to the baby. What ends up happening is little Albert becomes classically conditioned, okay? Which is a term we'll go over later on in detail. Basically it becomes classically conditioned to be scared of white furry things, because he pairs the white furry things with the giant, extremely loud metal rod noise behind the baby's head. Unethical in today's world. Unethical. You wouldn't be able to do this. It might cause some damage to that child later on in life. We don't know what would happen to little Albert. Little Albert, I think, got to a couple years older than that, and then ended up passing away from an unrelated disease from this. So very interesting stuff. Again, we're going to touch on this several times throughout our course. One thing that you have to take away from this is little Albert began to cry at the sight of white furry objects. Not only a white rat or a white mask or anything like that, so they basically paired it. And this thing happened to little Albert called generalization. So generalization basically says, hey, you know what? The best example for this would be like, I got bit by a spider. I'm not only scared of spiders now, I'm scared of all bugs. That would be stimulus generalization. Stimulus discrimination would be, I got bit by a spider, and now I'm only scared of spiders, particularly the type that bit me. So that would be stimulus discrimination. What happened to little Albert? Stimulus discrimination. Stimulus generalization. Sorry. First unit, people. Let me work through this with you. The next thing is the Marshmallow Experiment, which is pretty, interesting at least. This is an experiment that tested instant versus delayed gratification in infants, not infants, but toddlers. And it's basically testing if somebody could sit there for 10 minutes, a toddler, and if they decide not to eat the marshmallow that's in front of them, they get 2 marshmallows at the end. 200 of the 600 participants displayed delayed gratification. This happened in 1970. Participants basically who exuded delayed gratification actually ended up being more successful later on in life. And then in turn, they did some follow-up studies for this in the 80s and the 90s. And they also scored higher on the SAT. So if you are willing to wait and work for a goal, it's correlated with being more successful and scoring pretty high on these test, aptitude and achievement tests. It's a good thing. All right, delayed gratification is a good thing. Now, what world do we live in right now? Instant gratification, but you know what? I can't sit here and say that I don't use my cell phone every day, all day. I know that hard work ends up getting you what you want in life. So delayed gratification is pretty important, specifically if you want to be successful. There's a video that goes along with this. If you would like to watch it, watch it. It's fairly cute, if I might say that. All right. Change blindness. Very interesting. This goes back to the selective attention test. So change blindness is a surprising perceptual phenomenon that occurs when a change in a visual stimulus is introduced and the observer does not notice it. Okay, does not notice it. Because we weren't necessarily looking for it. For example, observers often fail to notice major differences introduced into an image when it flickers on and off. And this is an example here of an image that would do that. And it would be hard to pick up the branches, all right, or the people here that are missing right here. Or there's a tower here that isn't there. And if it was just flickering on and off, it might be hard to pick up. But, you know, some people have a higher threshold for this, and they can do it pretty easily. People's poor ability to detect changes has been argued to reflect fundamental limitations in human attention. Human attention is limited. Your memory, your long-term memory, limitless. But to be able to focus and get everything in, that's kind of difficult for a human to do. So there's also an awesome video for that as well. Pull it up if you want to. You know, it's a guy, Darren Brown, and he basically changes while in mid-conversation with somebody, completely changes the other person who comes in, and the person never notices because they are so concerned with helping the person find a place on a map. Okay? So that video is located here. It's linked up for you. Ash Conformity Test. This is huge. You know, there's something you need to know in this class, and that is that Solomon Asch researched conformity. He did this through a line test. So the Asch Conformity Experiments, or the Asch Paradigm, refers to a series of studies directed by Solomon Asch, studying if and how individuals yield to or defy a majority group, and the effect of such influences on beliefs and opinions. It's developed in the 1950s. It's been performed over and over again. We'll talk about it more later on. But applications include the study of conformity effects of task importance, age, gender, culture. I'm going to try to show you a video here of it really quickly. And this guy.
The Asch experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Two.
1.
So here, he thinks
Once
he's got
again,
it.
the correct
And he
answer
does.
is 2.
3. 3. 3. 3.
3.
The Asch experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1.
1.
1.
1.
Group dynamic.
So yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but you'll find this out in this class. You know, I know that we live in a world of be an individual, be yourself, and all that kind of stuff, but our brain is actually made and designed or evolved to conform to the group. Because what does that do for us? You know, rewind thousands upon thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. It is more beneficial to be a part of a group for survival. And we live in a world maybe where that isn't quite true right now, but our bodies and our brains are designed to conform. Again, it's going to increase the chances of survival, and you'll see that in this course, the human mind, the human brain, the body, they've all designed itself to survive. So, all right, let's back to the slides. All right. So, come on now. All right, the next thing is the Milgram experiment. So when you hear Milgram, Stanley Milgram, that's his name, you're going to go straight to a word called obedience. He studies obedience. So what we have here is a Milgram experiment. Basically, a social psychology experiment conducted at Yale University. Stanley Milgram measured the willingness of study participants to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Very interesting experiment here. So in this room, you would have an experimenter and a teacher. The teacher is actually the subject of the experiment. Okay? And in another room would be this person called the learner. The learner might not even be real. It might be like a video recording or audio recording of somebody. But in front of the teacher, who is the subject of the experiment, is this machine. That machine has different buttons, and it goes all the way up to past 350 volts, which is deadly. And you go up by 15, and you ask these questions pretty much. And the questions are really simple, like which word doesn't belong. So you would have cow, horse, cat, and then car. And then the person in the other room, which is probably a recording, would say cow. And the experimenter, this guy, girl, whoever it is right behind you, and they're in a white coat, so they seem like they're an authority figure. And they're behind the teacher, okay? And the teacher presses down the 15-volt electric shock to the learner. Guess what happens? The learner goes, "Hey, ow, that hurt." Okay, that's my impression of the learner. And then the teacher, the subject of the experiment, says, "I don't want to continue, experimenter. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to hurt anybody." And the experimenter, who's in the white coat, basically says, "Continue. Continue on." "I don't feel comfortable," says the teacher. "Please, continue. It's for the experiment. Continue." And what happens is over 50% of these people administering the shocks, over 50% of them end up killing the learner. Now, the learner's a fake person, probably just an audio recording, whatever. But because the authority figure, the experimenter, behind them is telling them to continue, it's okay, then they kind of dissolve their sense of responsibility, put it on the experimenter because they're telling them to do it, and then they continue to press the buttons over and over and over again until they possibly murder somebody. It's wild. Okay? So Solomon Asch, conformity. Stanley Milgram, obedience. The Robbers Cave Experiment, our only Turkish psychologist, Muzaffer Sharif. So he took 22, 11, and 12-year-old boys to a campground. All right, he divided them up into two groups. One of the groups was the Rattlers, and the other one was the Eagles. And they didn't meet each other. Okay? For the longest time, they had a period pretty much called the in-group formation. This was upon arrival. The boys were split into two groups. Each group was unaware of the other group's presence, and they existed together for a while. The second stage was called the friction phase, and in this phase, they pitted the two groups of boys against each other. And, you know, baseball, capture the flag, tug of war, games like that. And they ended up creating friction, hence the name friction phase. And then the third and final stage was the integration stage. So how do we get these people to work together again after we've caused this rift between them? So during this stage, tensions between the groups were reduced through teamwork-driven tasks that required intergroup cooperation. The water truck that would bring fresh water in broke down. And so all 22 boys had to get together to push the water truck. This helped. But just watching a movie or eating lunch together did not help. It had to be some sort of task that needed both groups to actually succeed. If it was just eating together, they'd have a food fight. If it was a movie that they were watching together, they would end up having a fist fight. So the integration stage was to get them back together, but it had to be cohesive. Okay. So he comes up with this thing called realistic conflict theory. And realistic conflict theory basically says, in a world of limited resources, people will fight over them. Okay? And these resources might have just been pride. You know, ooh, we won tug of war today. That's what we're talking about there. In the real world, it could be oil, it could be lumber, it could be anything you think of. You know, it could be anything, any type of resource between, you know, and a group is going to fight over that. So Muzaffer Sharif comes up with realistic conflict theory through the Robbers Cave Experiment. The Stanford Prison Experiment, you've probably heard about this one before. There's a movie, I think it might still be on Netflix, don't know. But this is a study of psychological effects of becoming a prisoner or a prison guard. This guy, one of the most famous psychologists of all time, Philip Zimbardo, they were at Stanford, okay, and they create a fake prison in the basement, and they get 24 male students, okay, selected. This is the ad right here for it. Male students needed to participate in psychological study of prison life, $15 a day.